Well, the hard drive is no big deal. I mean,
Well, as long as you got your music for church.
yeah. Well, that's what we had to get.
Oh,
That's
hard
what's
drive.
on the hard drive.
Oh, darn.
So, welcome to Faith Family United Church of Christ. Study in Luke. Study in Acts. We're in Acts chapter 20 today. So we'll look at our scripture. As you can see, chapter 20 starts out with Paul goes to Macedonia and Greece, and basically this little 1 through 6 is just Paul's running around to all these little areas and just kind of hitting base with them, making sure that they're still understanding what he went there the first time for. And it seems by chapter or by verse 6, but we sailed from Philippi after the days of unleavened bread, and in 5 days we joined them in Troas, where we stayed. That's not what I went to do. Where is it at? I lost my thought here. It was when Paul says he wants to go to Jerusalem. He's headed to Jerusalem. Do you see that anywhere? Might be in the next.
You said.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Macedonia.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's in the next section.
And you came to Greece and stayed for 3 months.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead to the second page here. In the first part, he's talking about running through Greece and Macedonia and encouraging the people there. And this comes, if you notice in the very beginning, it says, after the uproar.
Mm-hmm.
The uproar is the word that they use there. That Greek word can mean noise or loud commotion. Okay, it's not necessarily an uproar. Yeah. If you recall from the last time we were talking about in chapter 19, we talked about starting in 21, the quote unquote, the heading is the riots in Ephesus. And remember, we talked about how it does not say it was a riot. It says they were in danger of being charged with rioting. Okay. So we talked a little bit about how if you're for whatever the protest is, it's a protest. But if you're against it, what are you going to call it? A riot. Even though there wasn't violence or anything like that, you're still going to, put out that thought that this is a riot and it should have been stopped. And so when we read this story in chapter 19 about this uprising, they use the word here, an uprising, to refer back to that. We see that the people were upset with Paul, and they were protesting because Paul was telling people, hey, we don't worship idols, and yet the whole city was filled with idols. And the people that made the idols, they were losing business. And so they were upset. And so they started this uproar. And
well, the messenger says, we're putting our city in serious danger. Rome, remember, does not look kindly on rioters.
Yeah, they call it rioters there. So
everything's a dollar bill. Everything's money.
It is. I got in an argument just yesterday about trying to return something to Amazon and trying to talk with the AI computer, and I said, they said, for a price you can do this. I was like, that's all it's about, is making money. Anyway, you can see, but at the same time you can understand, you know, this is our livelihood and it's going away. So they feel a need to do that, a need to uproar. Okay. But anyway, I just wanted to point out the word uproar is used here, and it means noise or loud commotion. And so you can see the idea of turning it into a riot is what we're doing looking back on it. And one of the things I wanted to point out to you, do you know have you seen the movie 1946? It's a documentary. You've seen it? Yeah. It's a documentary when they decided to put the word homosexual in the Bible, to translate some of the words as homosexual. And it comes from a certain mind point. That's not what it's talking about when you look at the Bible. It's a word that has no definition in the time of the writing of the Bible, because what they were, when they talk about a man lying with a man or verbiage like that, it's not the same as it is today, where you have two consenting, loving adults sharing love, whether it's a man and a man, a woman and a woman, a man and a woman, or whatever the relationship is. That is not portrayed in the Bible. And to take our own ideas and put them back into the Bible, it changes the whole meaning. And that's what the movie 1946 kind of shows. But I saw that in this as well, in our thing, this idea that, there was a commotion, there was a loud demonstration, an uproar. But when a lot of our Bibles, like the NIV and everything, has been written in the translated, and we look it through the lens of what? The civil rights movement. And if you look at the civil rights movement, they call those riots. But if you follow them closely, Martin Luther King was adamant about nonviolence. And so the violence came from one side, and that was the police force and those in authority trying to get them out of there. They didn't want to hear that stuff. And so they set dogs on them, they sent fire hoses on them, they beat them with batons. And then when you see that, someone getting beaten, that's violence. That's a riot. But it wasn't necessarily a riot in that form.
But wouldn't the riots have been when they burned the cities and looted the places?
Okay.
Kind of like they did on Fowler Avenue a couple of years ago.
I'm not familiar with that, but yeah, but then again, we've come to see the people that do that are not the people that are doing the protesting as much as it is the people that are trying to cause a commotion.
Right. Or the protests suddenly took a different turn and turned into damaging property and burning out.
Exactly. And then you could say that's a riot.
Right.
That's a riot. But for the most part, when we look back upon things, one of the things that I saw, there's a little cartoon, and it's a man doing an interview with Martin Luther King, and behind, he's talking about peacefulness and rioting, and then in the background it's people being, fighting and starting fires. And that was the mindset that they wanted you to have back in the civil rights. These are rioters. They're rioting. And that's what people thought about them. My mother, Martin Luther King Jr. Was going to come to my little hometown in Marietta. And they said, no, we don't want you to come here. And my mother was like, that's good because he just stirs up trouble wherever he goes. And it's like,
Well, as John Lewis would say, it was good trouble.
yeah,
But it was peaceful trouble.
yeah, exactly. But
in doing that, it caused people to react negatively. Not that he caused it, but people did.
exact. Well, when you try to show people the truth and show them that, hey, you're not living in a paradise when half of the people, when a majority, when a lot of the people are living under oppression, but we don't want to hear that because my life is happy, and so we're going to call that a right. Okay, yeah. I beat that horse to death. But anyway, I just wanted to point out that that wasn't necessarily a riot, and it's way we translate things and the way we come to understand things. We will always put our understanding, our views on it, and call it what we call it today, when that's not what they called it back then, or what it was back then. So, okay, Paul does his farewells. The chapter or verse 7. On the first day of the week, when we met to break bread. What does that mean?
Have a meal together.
Have a meal together. But it says on the first day of the week, which is
Monday.
Sunday.
Oh.
That would be communion.
Is it a meal or is it communion? That's the question here. Some people, some denominations take that on the first day that when we met to break bread. That says on the first day, that's the only time you can do communion. It's on the first day of the week,
Why is it so restrictive? What is it?
But that's just the nature of religion, I'm going to put restrictions upon myself to make sure that I can be the best person I can be. And so instead of helping you be the best person you can be, I'm going to take my restrictions and put them on you too. And you got to follow them, and you got to follow them. But it's my restrictions to help me. And it's like my dogs. When I go to give them a treat, they'll both get almost head to head, and I go to give them a treat. And if I want the treat to go to this one, but I'm right-handed, so there's a dog on this side, I always say, like I'll say, Sophia's, and I'll go to give it to Sophia, and the other dog, he'll look away, and that's his restriction, right? That's his restriction. I'm not going to tempt myself by letting that get close to me. And so, but to make that a rule that everybody has to follow, my other dog, we had another dog, Nathan, he was the same way. But David, I had a lot of dogs. David, when you'd say it was for someone else, he would follow it. He wouldn't take it from you, but he would follow. He'd smelling it, He's like, "What are we getting? What are we getting?" But that's the point. Is we cannot put our restrictions on someone else. It's for us. Now this, like you said, it sounds like they were eating a meal. They gathered together to do a potluck on Sundays, maybe after the service or something. That could have been what that was. Or it could be that was communion. They gathered for communion. But to say now, well, you can we do communion on Sunday, or it doesn't say that. You're putting your thoughts and your actions, your rules onto someone else. And all it is, oh, look, they used to break bread on Sunday. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit because there's another part later. And I find it interesting, and it doesn't clear up this question. Is it communion or is it a meal? So, okay. The other thing is this guy, and I always remember this guy's name. I don't know why his name is Eutychus. Eutychus. So Paul is preaching on a Sunday, and it's kind of like me some Sundays. I get going and going, and Paul goes on into midnight. Can you imagine preaching all day long?
Isn't that Southern?
Going into midnight. That's Pentecostal. If you've ever been to a Pentecostal, they just go on and on and on and on. Anyway, Eutychus falls asleep in the window. And then Eutychus isn't in the window. He's on the second floor, and then he finds himself on the ground.
He fell.
And he died. Notice it says, overcome by sleep, he fell onto the ground 3 floors below. 3, excuse me, not 2, 3 floors below. And was picked up dead. He was dead. Boom. That's it. He's gone. But Paul went down and bent over him and took him in his arms and said, do not be alarmed, for his life is in him. Then Paul went upstairs. So he went down, he picked him up, and he brought him back to life. Remember what we're talking about, Acts now. We're talking about Acts. What is it about Acts? What is one of the points of Acts, the book of Acts? It is to point out Paul is just like the other apostles, like Peter and John. So is there a place in Acts where Peter raises someone from the dead? Yes, we've already seen that. That's in Acts chapter 9, starting at verse 36, when he goes down and when Peter raises Dorcas, also known as Tabitha, raises her from the dead. And so here we have Paul raising someone from the dead as well. Thought that interesting, isn't it? You see Paul, in the first part of Acts, we see Peter and John doing some things, doing some miracles, doing some other things. And then after verse 9 or 12, chapter 9 or chapter 12, it's all about Paul doing the same things. So it's interesting.
If you, in your studies, if you come across a person that's completely argumentative and would say, no, he had a seizure, no, he wasn't dead, he was just, the body, it happens if they don't get a heartbeat.
Oh, you're talking about Jesus?
Yeah, they're sitting there saying, no.
Or he was knocked out and came back to life.
Yes,
naturally.
yes, he didn't, it was no miracle. People are so argumentative, they want to pinpoint and say the Bible's wrong.
Well, it's somebody's interpretation of what happened, what they're communicating. And if you don't get anything else out of it, for those people that want to be argumentative and try to deny, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, science says this and science says that, it can't happen this way, they're not looking for what is really there, and that's the story. That's the important part. Something happened here. If you don't get anything else out of it, something happened. Now, these people might not have been able to communicate that very well, and so they put in their superstitions, their ideas of miracles to explain it the way that they could. But something big happened there, and so that's what we need to focus on. What are they trying to communicate? What was the big thing? Is it the miracle, or is it the message behind the miracle? And so sometimes we get caught up, and one side gets caught up of trying to disprove the miracles, another side gets, but the miracle itself isn't the message. The message is behind the miracle. What is the message behind the miracle? That's what we need. That's what they're really trying to communicate with to us. Okay, moving on. So here's where I started off. I started off on page 2. So now we see that Paul's going around and he's saying goodbye to all these people. And he says he was eager to be in Jerusalem, if possible, on the day of Pentecost. Now that is verse 16 and verse 16. So Paul's going around seeing all these churches that he's started, and he's making his way back to Jerusalem. And so we have this kind of build up in this section, and especially in the next section, when Paul goes and speaks to the elders of Ephesus, and he says his goodbye to them. And that's important because he says his goodbye to them, and he's like, and it says that he feels that he will never see them again. So, dun dun dun, kind of building the suspense to what's going to happen in Jerusalem. So it's almost as if we're looking back on the gospel and how Jesus turns his face to Jerusalem. Is this what's going to happen to Paul here? Is he going to go to Jerusalem and be killed? Now, this is an important thing to think about. At this time, Jerusalem has already been destroyed. When this Acts was written, it's already been destroyed. So anytime someone brings up Jerusalem, the people are like, oh, kind of a nostalgia, kind of like upsets them. It's got triggering. This is the word Jerusalem, because not only is the city destroyed, the temple's destroyed, everything's destroyed. Jesus was killed in Jerusalem before the temple was destroyed. And so the mention of Jerusalem kind of brings everybody on edge. And so Paul's he wants to go back to Jerusalem. And it's kind of, oh, is this another Jesus story where he's going to go there and get killed? And then he goes and he says his goodbyes, and I probably won't see you again. So there's a big dramatic build-up for what's going to happen in Jerusalem. Okay, so do you think that Paul might have thought he was going to die in Jerusalem when he went to Jerusalem, just like Jesus? Do you think that by reading this part of this?
Sure sounds like it.
It does. Well, if not, that's the way Luke kind of writes it in to build that dramatic. So this is like a segue from this going into Paul's journey to Jerusalem. And if you look in 21, that's where we'll start next week. He's going to Jerusalem. So we see this again. And things to remember were the fall of the temple. Jesus was dead there. And so in the back of the mind of the readers, they're going, oh no, don't go. I think of the people that watch the movies at the theater and yell at the screen, no, don't go in there, run the other way, or something like that. So you can see that the drama is building here. So any questions on chapter 20? Kind of short, kind of a segue. We get a little bit of doctrine out of it that is not necessarily there, but we force it to be there. The breaking of bread equals the communion, and you're supposed to do it every the first day of the week only, which is interesting. Catholics take communion every day, or it's offered every day.
Yeah, we'll have mass every day.
Every day, yeah. So
Where do the Catholics get the Hail Mary all the time? Everything's Hail Mary.
it's a part of
The rosary.
the rosary. It's part of their tradition. When Mary was raised to sainthood, the tradition is Mary never died. She was assumed just like Jesus, and stuff like that. But it's made out. It's not in the Bible. It's out of tradition and reverence to her. And there's so much that comes to the point of, it's called Mariology, meaning the study of Mary and how she's changed over the years, and to become so venerated that,
Beyond a saint.
yeah, she's almost next to Jesus in her holiness. So anyway,
Did you happen to bring printouts for 21, chapter 21?
I do. I think I do have them. Let me see here. All in here. Okay. There we go. my video's still going, so I'll have to edit it later.
So you remind me of the guys that play that game with a stick and a ball. They're all dressed in white.
Cricket?
Cricket, yes.
I've been watching cricket lately. That's
must have influenced your wardrobe.
it's pretty interesting game.
Yes.
It's a slow game. I mean, not slow.